What's up, Exiles? This is Hegemony, and today I wanted to share with you guys the very last character I made on the Hardcore Prophecy League. This character was more or less a challenge from the viewers. They wanted me to make Viper Strike viable, so this was my attempt in doing so. And in order to save time, I leveled up as Reeve until level 68, and that's when I swapped to Viper Strike with Melee Splash. Now this video isn't going to be an extensive guide. Instead, I'm going to talk about my journey and the mechanics behind the build. Let's take a look at the Assassin's Ascendancy tree. The main notables are Noxious Strike and Toxic Delivery. Noxious Strike gives me a 30% chance to cause bleeding, 40% chance to poison on hit against bleeding enemies, and then a 50% chance for attacks to maim on hit against poison enemies. Toxic Delivery gives me 20% of physical damage gained as extra chaos damage against bleeding enemies. Poison you inflict with Critical Strike deals 100% more damage, and bleeding you inflict on maimed enemies deals 100% more damage. So these two nodes on the Assassin tree pretty much incentivizes you to get a combo running. So naturally I picked a movement skill with an AoE, and I picked up a Void Heart, which applies the bleed and poison. So my combo was more or less shield charge into a pack, and if there's a high HP target, Viper Strike it down. Well, it turned out that shield charge on a 4-link was wrecking the entire pack by itself. By the time I tried to Viper Strike the original target, it had already died. So I went ahead and swapped the 5-link in the chest from Viper Strike to shield charge, and then I just started leveling up with Viper Strike as a single target skill. Now while this is a pretty effective build, there were a lot of hardships with the itemization. First off, let's look at shield charge. You'll notice that it's a red gem that's pure strength, 155 strength requirement. In addition, it requires 3 more red sockets with melee physical damage, melee damage on full life. Now this support works since I'm CI, I have 1 life, and therefore I am always at full life unless I'm dead. And then we have Fortify support for defense and damage. And lastly, we have faster attacks, which is a green gem. And all this is important because usually you want to use a Vol Regalia as a CI character. You can get anywhere from 600 to 800 ES relatively easy. But the problem is the Vol Regalia has a 194 int requirement. And according to the Verici calculator, it would take you 1 in 5,735 chromes to even get these colors. So how do you solve this problem with chroming your chest? You just get the Atziri Splendor, and this is why it's kind of gated around this chest. Atziri Splendor drops off of Uber Atziri, and it has a chance of getting different rolls. And the important thing about this garb is that it has 66 strength, dex, and int requirement. This means it's not partial to any color, and it's going to be very easy to get the colors that you need for Viper Strike. I found this to be an easy solution to a very tough problem that I was going to have. I managed to get 667 ES on this garb. In addition, it comes with 23 all-res. It's pretty much as good as it's going to get for a CI character that needs 5 off. There were only 3 of these available towards the last month of the Hardcore Prophecy League. At the time I bought this for 15x, I noticed the Softcore Prophecy League had 15 of these with roughly the same ES. So we have Void Heart, it's pretty expensive, the chest is pretty expensive, and then we have the Beano's Kitchen Knife, which is not too expensive. This is my main weapon, and the reason Beano's is so damn awesome is because it offers me an insanely high crit chance, 9.83 local crit, and it can go a little bit higher. We also have Crit Multi, which is great. And on killing a poison enemies, nearby enemies are poisoned, so when I apply a poison, it can then proliferate in a small radius. Nearby allies regenerate 200 life per second. And with the Assassin Ascendancy tree, it's all about getting crits. Unstable Infusion gives me a 10% chance to gain a power charge on non-critical strike. So as my crit gets better, this becomes worse. Deadly Infusion gives me 8% to critical strike multiplier per power charge and 0.5% local critical strike chance per power charge. So we want to get as many power charges as possible. So in Merciless I chose Alira so that I could get the power charge. And we have the Shadow Power Charge and the Witch Power Charge. The Templar one is way too far. With 6 power charges and the Ice Golem, I'm at the crit cap of 95. So as my crit chance was getting better, it was harder to sustain power charges because Unstable Infusion wasn't as effective. So that's the reason I picked up Overcharge. This gives me an 8% chance to gain a Power, Frenzy, or Endurance Charge on kill. Now it only gives you one of these orbs, but when you clear fast enough with Vol Haste and you charge like a Raging Bull, you'll eventually just get all your charges and sustain it by fast clear speed. Originally, I had Energy from Within, which converts the life on this wheel into Energy Shield. But I was getting so sick of my power charges falling off, I decided to swap for Intuitive Leap, just pick up Melding for the 10% ES, and then pick up Overcharge for the charge consistency. It's also nice getting a bunch of endurance charges. It allows me to play a bit more reckless. Keep in mind, I can also generate endurance charges with Enduring Cry on demand. So you might wonder what makes this build unique. And in my opinion, running Blood Rage as CI is quite the feat, especially in hardcore. A long time ago, GGG nerfed Blood Rage by changing it from a Chaos degen to a physical degen. It was essentially free as CI. Now usually the Blood Rage downside is dealt with a significant amount of life regen, but I am CI in this case. And you'll notice that the keystone that I need, Zealot's Oath, which converts life regeneration to energy shield regeneration, is all the way over here, and it's nowhere near my tree. However, I do have the Sorrow of the Divine Sulfur Flask, and this is one of the ways this build is able to deal with the Blood Rage degen. And you might be thinking, well, it's on a flask, you can't possibly rely on that. Its base duration is 6.8 seconds, and because I have flask nodes in the Witch, which increases my duration by 12%, in addition I have Primal Spirit, which gives me a 20% increased flash charges gained. That and the fact that it only consumes 20 charges and it can hold up to 60, so that means I can use it 3 times for over 24 seconds total, if I were to chain it. You could also get a belt mod that would improve it, but I don't have one. In addition to providing Zealot's Oath for long periods of time, it drops Consecrated Ground. Consecrated Ground, when standing in it, gives you 2% life regeneration per second, which will also get converted to ES because the flask gives me Zealot's Oath. In addition to the utility of providing Zealot's Oath, it gives me 40% global damage. That affects my upfront physical and chaos damage, in addition to bleed and poison. So not only that, let's go back to the Beano's Kitchen Knife. Upon scoring a kill, I get 200 life regenerated per second, and with the Zealot's Oath Flask, it converts that to ES. But that's not all. On our shield, we have 20% reduced damage taken from damage over time. This is a crafted mod granted by the Forsaken Master Leo. But we're not even close to done yet. We have Toxic Delivery, which also has 10% reduced damage taken from damage over time. And since we have 3 endurance charges, we can't forget that endurance charges provide 4% Physmid per charge. So that's a total of 12% damage reduction to the physical degen. Now what else do we have? We have Growth and Decay that gives me 1% life regen. The node before it gives me 0.6, and the node before that gives me 0.4. Scrolling down towards the Ranger, I have Heart of Oak. This also grants me 1% life regen per second. Now none of these regen effects will be active unless I hit the Sorrow of the Divine Sulfur Flask. But it's nice to know that with the shield and the Ascendancy, we have 30% reduced and 12% reduced from endurance charges. And don't forget, when I actively use Enduring Cry, it gives me 394 life regenerated per second for 1.57 seconds. Now it says 1.34, but upon killing a maimed enemy, I get 30% skill effect duration. This will affect my Blood Rage, it'll affect my Ball Haste and how long it lasts. It'll also affect how long my Viper Strike and Volt Lightning Trap will last. As far as duration goes, we have Entropy, which gives us 5%, but mainly we get 30% from Noxious Strike upon killing a maimed enemy, and we maim enemies all the time. So let's talk about how we heal when taking significant amounts of damage. We have Ghost Reaver, which converts leech and applies it to energy shield. The leech that we gain from Blood Rage is 1.2%, and since I wanted to face tank a lot of things, I made a conscious effort to get as much leech as possible on gear. My amulet comes with 1.11% of physical attack damage leeches life. I also have a jewel between the Shadow and Ranger, and this one grants me 0.29%. This is a grand total of 2.96. On my gloves I have 0.36% physical attack damage. This makes it a grand total of 2.96% life leech from physical damage. But that's not all. My last source of leech would be my Series Promise, which gives me 2% of chaos damage leech's life during the flask effect. So let's talk about upfront flat chaos damage. This 4-shaper wheel grants me 5% of physical damage as extra chaos. In addition, we have Toxic Delivery, which gives us 20% of physical damage gain as extra chaos damage against bleeding enemies. And then we have its Series Promise, which gives you 25% of physical damage as extra chaos damage during the flask effect. So with its Series Promise up, I have 30% of physical as extra chaos, and if I have a bleed on it, it'll then take 20% additional. That's a lot of chaos damage up front from shield charge. Viper Strike is a bit different. It has 25% of physical damage converted to chaos. This is still good, and it still does a shit ton of upfront chaos damage. This build doesn't really focus on attacking fast as humanly possible. Rather, it focuses on giving that toxic and bleeding delivery. And because it's a double degen build, that's why I chose Blasphemy and Vulnerability. It goes hand in hand. As I shield charge into a pack, it applies the bleed and poison. If anything's left over, I can shield charge again or Viper Strike. By the way, if you made it this far in the video, I want to tip my hat to you. Now let's talk about how this character deals with the downsides of CI. I'm using a flask called Kiara's Determination. This is a really powerful flask for CI. It grants me freeze, chill, curse, and stun immunity during the flask duration. However, this flask only lasts about 4 seconds with my Witch Flask node, and it consumes 40 out of 60 charges. So with the flask having limited use and requiring me to score kills to use it a second time, I wanted contingencies. I managed to pick up Rainbow Strides, which have an 80% chance to avoid being stunned if you've killed recently. This is an Uber Lab enchant, and it would take quite some time and effort to farm for this. Fortunately, I was able to buy this at 30C, because nobody was really searching for it. Now this only grants me the avoidance if I've killed recently. So if I can't use my Kiara's Determination, and I haven't killed recently, I still have a chance to avoid stun thanks to Heart of Oak, which grants me 20% chance to avoid stun, and then the nodes beside it, which give me 8% each. That's a combined total of 36% passively. Ultimately, I would like to get rid of Kiara's. I've been Vol Orbing a bunch of Oxiums in efforts to get +1 Endurance Charge or 6% Radius. Oxium for the most part would cover my Chill and Freeze, and my Rainbow Strides and my Ranger nodes would cover my stuns. It's no secret that CI gets a lot of its defenses through flask usage and fast clearing. Rumi's Concoction was the other flask that I chose for this build. Since I have a shield and the Ranger block node, Precise Interception, and Rumi's Concoction, and Rainbow Strides, it allows me to get 60% block with 33% spell block. Rumi's also helps me achieve 4.2k armor when it's up. And for this particular character, in order to be very tanky, I doubled down with the Basalt Flask. This is my bleed removal, and it's extremely reliable. It lasts over 9 seconds. Not only do I have block, spell block, regen, endurance charges, fizz damage mitigation, but I also have 5.5k evasion. I achieved this mainly because I'm using the Vertex Mask. This is a good option for this character because it provides really good defense, and it also is very cheap. One of the highlights of this helm is that it gives +1 level to socketed gems. So in efforts to min-max, I put my Viper Strike in my helmet. I have Viper Strike linked with melee damage on full life, void manipulation, and melee physical damage. These are all more multipliers. And getting +1 level to all these gems makes a big difference. I was unsuccessful in getting a proper helm enchant for this character, and trust me, I tried. Let's go over the rest of the links and the gear that you haven't seen. In the weapon we have Summon Ice Golem, Blood Rage, and Arctic Armor. Blood Rage is an awesome thing to put in your weapon because whenever you want to turn it off, all you have to do is weapon swap and boom, it's gone. Same thing with the Ice Golem. If you want to dismiss him because you're about to do the Orchard boss, it's probably a good idea, just weapon swap. Arctic Armor is kind of like a flex buff. Sometimes I run Herald of Ash, sometimes I run Arctic Armor. It depends on how rippy the map is. In my shield I have Casting Damage Taken, Greater Multiple Projectiles, and Arctic Breath. This is great because I don't do any cold damage, so this is one way to slow them down without having to use Temp Chains or Hatred. In my gloves I have Increased Duration, Vol Haste, Vol Lightning Trap, and Enduring Cry. Vol Lightning Trap is used sometimes on bosses just to boost DPS and get 50% more damage. And lastly, in my boots I have Vulnerability, Discipline, Herald of Ash, and Blasphemy. Let's take a look at the rest of the gear. The gloves were a nice find. I think I ended up paying 40 chaos for it. The necklace is super cheap, around 20 chaos, probably because it's not a very popular build. This ring was insane. The guy only wanted 5 chaos for it. That was the steal of a deal. And as far as this shield, I ended up paying 50 chaos for it. And then I YOLO X'd the 11 all res and crafted the Leo mod myself. All in all, this character was a lot of fun. We managed to get level 90 in the Hardcore Prophecy League before it ended. And I'm really happy that the Minotaur supporter pack really matches the theme of this character. If you would like to see the progression of this character, you can check out in the description below. I have a thread there. The last few things you might want to know about this character is I have Mana Leech on a single jewel in the Witch. As for Bandits, I got the skill point in Normal, the attack speed in Cruel, and then the power charge in Merciless. It's hard for me to recommend this build to you guys because I had such a hard time and it was such a pain in the ass to get all the items in Hardcore Prophecy League. I'd imagine if you're playing the Softcore Challenge League, it'll be 5 times easier. I hope you enjoyed this build project, and in my next video, I'm going to be sharing what starter build I'm going to be doing in the upcoming Essence League. Thank you guys for watching, and if you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'm Hegemony. See you in the next video.